3 days and counting until Greg names his final roster of the octagonal World Cup qualifying campaign. And for once, U.S. men's national team fans have some good news where it relates to injuries anyway. Gio Reyna is back. Zach Steffen is partially back. And Tyler Adams is back as well, but I'm always worried about his back. Oh, and this year's MLS becomes the dominant force in the region. Well, will they? Is it? Will it? I'm Heath Pearce, and this is Jimmy Conrad, and we want to hear from you in the chat. The USMNT Hour begins right now. Welcome one and welcome all. Before we get going, do us a favor, and also the wider YouTube community. Do us all a favor. Do the whole community a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and get busy in the live chat, or if you're watching this later, the comment section. Qué Golazo is nearly up to 10,000 subscribers. Actually, it's to 10,000, or it was at one point. I haven't checked again today in case anybody did a mass unsubscribe just to play a joke on us. So if anyone out there isn't yet subscribed, make sure you go and change that, because we're going to go 10 and we're going to go 20, and then we're going to be in the 20s of millions if we keep this thing up. Jimmy Conrad, what is going on, man?
You know what? 10 days from now, everybody, we will be kicking off against Mexico at Azteca. That is very exciting. I am starting, if I'm being honest, getting a little nervous. Not in a way where I think we're going to trip and fall or any of that type of stuff, but just that we're finally here. We've been talking about this particular window of games for quite some time, and we're inching closer, Heath Pearce.
So are we excited, Jimmy?
Yeah, of course I'm
excited. You and I both bought these hats from the exact same
we did
capsule collection back in 1993 or 94 when it came out. You know, we were both waiting in that long line at Supreme overnight to get these hats. So you know, are we excited about it? I mentioned in the intro, injuries are on the up, but in a way it's still a little bit confusing in terms of expectations. We're going to get into all of that on today's USMNT Hour, but are we excited in a confident way, or are we anxiously awaiting this roster release in these matches, or what?
I think that it's going to be a good opportunity. I'm not going to answer your question directly. A good opportunity for some players to get some minutes that maybe we haven't relied on as heavily in the last couple windows. I think that somebody's going to have to step in for Weston McKennie. Obviously, we have Gio Reyna coming back, which actually has been a pleasant surprise. He's, for me, back sooner than everybody anticipated, and for him to get some meaningful minutes already is a good sign, because now we've got 10 days to get him sharp. Whether we start him or not, I think that'll be a conversation we can get into in a second. Christian Pulisic is in good form right now. He's got a really nice connection with Kai Havertz, and it just shows you what we can do. And in some ways, when Berhalter watches Chelsea play and sees his connection with a certain type of striker, maybe we have somebody who has Kai Havertz like tendencies that can really blend well with Christian Pulisic. So something to get into as well from a conversational piece. Our goalkeepers, Zach Steffen's back in training. Matt Turner's out. Ethan Horvath, 3 wins and 2 draws in his 5 starts since taking over at Nottingham Forest. So it's interesting times. And now you got the Fulham guys. Tim Ream, you know, does he get a chance? You know, Aaron Long's healthy. We know Greg Berhalter really loves Aaron Long. Are we going to roll out a different center back pairing than what we've been looking at? Because Miles Robinson hasn't really started MLS very well. So there's a lot of questions, and I think there needs to be some answers, and we're going to find out where Greg's leaning very, very quickly. And I'm excited for the roster announcement here in a couple days.
Now, I gotta say this, because I know that timelines on Instagram are no longer dude, my brain.
Chronological?
Yes, that's the one. But I believe we've got a Robinson birthday today or yesterday, one of the two, depending on when I saw it. I didn't look at the time. And then we've got the other Robinson got engaged. Jedi Robinson got engaged to his baby mama. So exciting times, at least. Good things happening on things we can't control. So that's always positive vibes. Exactly. Going into this. But Jimmy, let's talk about Gio Reyna. You and I have speculated on this a lot. We stopped speculating because you know, there was this setback after setback, but there was this, you know, he had this interview where he talked about feeling good again and the excitement of just like, almost like they were mining his body for the root of the issue. And it's rare that we see this, right? Like, at least during when I was playing, like, you got a trainer, you got a doctor, you got some specialists, but now at these bigger clubs, I mean, they'll send them all over the world. Weston McKennie's in LA. You know, these bigger clubs will send them to all the specialists around the world to try to find these problems. And it seems like they found, like, they didn't say what it was, but they found the root of the problem that they could address and identify that's causing these setbacks for him. Do you think that this is knock on wood, the end of this sort of injury saga for him. It seems like it's very rare. Usually it's like injury, you come back from an injury because you get help and you recover. This seems like it was an actual like identification of a major issue that they were able to solve.
Well, speaking from experience, ahead of the 2006 World Cup, I don't know how long that took me to flex that, but before I got named to the team, I had been suffering with a hernia issue. And I was in that weird kind of purgatory. Like, do I go and tell the coaching staff I'm dealing with this and potentially miss out on being named to the team? And they're just going to go look at other options for backup center back to Eddie Pope and Oguchi Onyewu, or can I still be a guy that they can lean with? And I actually played against Germany in a friendly, not telling anybody I had a hernia issue. And I couldn't, I could barely run, swing, but I didn't want to pass up that opportunity because, I mean, if I could prove myself against the Germans in Germany at the Westfalenstadion where Borussia Dortmund play, then I feel like I got to be a lock to make the team. Now, I didn't play particularly well. The team didn't play particularly well. And I thought me and Brian Ching flew home on the same flight, and we both were kind of crying and laughing like that was it. We both thought we missed our opportunity to make the team, which is a moment I'll never forget. But I, at that point, had to face up to the fact that I was suffering and I couldn't play at 100% anymore. And I went and got sports hernia surgery. And when I went to the specialist in Munich, I flew all the way home to Kansas City, got assessed there and said, I want to go back to the specialist. I can get you back in 2 weeks. Like, I was taking these big risks. And ultimately what I think this doctor did was I think she clipped the nerve. But when I got there, they said, actually, both of your hernias on both sides, you have to get done. And so you have to go do 2 weeks, come back and do the other one. I said, I don't have a month. I'm trying to make a World Cup team. I don't have a month. So I was only the second person out of like 5,000 or 6,000 athletes that they've done surgery on to get bilateral surgery at the same exact time. And I came out of there like a complete old man. Now, I tell you this thing and give you context because when I got back after 2 weeks, or once I was back, I still had issues, but it had just moved down. I had a growing/adductor issue. And I played on that the rest of 2006. At the end of 2006, I ran into a specialist who just happened to live in Nebraska, about 3 hours north of Kansas City, who specialized in these kind of like, I've shown you these hip exercises, by the way.
Are you just Nebraska's your place? Like,
no, I
why
just
are you
heard
randomly
about it
in Nebraska at this point?
Well, no, because one of my friends who was like a college athlete in Kansas City said, I had the same kind of issue. You had a hernia thing. And he had done all this legwork and research and found this guy that was thinking outside the box. And ultimately, you just do these certain stretches. So you ultimately line up your hips. My hip alignment was a little bit out, and it was drawing more on my adductor when I
remember those stretches.
You remember, right?
Yeah.
So I bring that up because I started showing a whole bunch of people, and because it was solving that issue of like, essentially when you plant your foot and swing, and it's your plant leg and all that power that you need to generate when you swing. So when I solved that problem, it changed my life. And when I see these comments from Gio Reyna and how they unlock something, that is what triggers it for me. And I remember I showed everybody. Remember Sebastian Kiel, who played for Borussia Dortmund? Mm-hmm. Like, he sought me out in LA because when I was with the national team, he's like, hey, somebody told me you have some exercises that can help me, because he had just done hernia surgery. So I showed him all the stuff. I photocopied all the papers for him. I used to show you, Landon Donovan, like anybody that was suffering, and it all worked. And it's crazy when you start to find that one thing to try to find the root source of your issue. Anyway, I'm a long story of saying I'm super excited for Gio Reyna. And if he's running around and already back and has that type of confidence, that bodes very well for us in this upcoming window for him to have an impact. I don't know if he starts, Heath, against Mexico, but I think you can bring him on, make it situational. And we saw even against Honduras away from home, when things weren't going well for us, we could make changes at halftime and those players could go on to have an influence. I think we could consider him for that against Mexico. But then in that game at home against Panama, assuming he's still playing and getting more minutes and doing wrong and getting stronger and all that, then I think maybe you can start him against Panama. But it's nice to have some options with Pulisic in form, Brendan Aronson in form. So it's good problems to have.
I know this is USMNT hour, but we got to give context to people of just the mental side of all this, right? And for me personally, there was a number of times where you go in, you've got your trainer tells you identify it, right? You're forced to be in a position where in the beginning, you got to blindly trust, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody knows more than you about something. Imagine that, right? Imagine the world that we live in now where somebody else has done the work and you got to believe that person. They did their research, so to speak. And And when you have a setback on that, there is a major, and it's just like there's no difference for anybody who's gone through any injuries or anything in their workplace or sports or anything like that. The second time you start to go, all right, I trusted you blindly, but maybe you don't know everything there is to know about this. Maybe there is some other issues, because I remember during my time when I got traded from Dallas to Chivas to New York.
Mm-hmm.
During that period, each one of those trainers told me something different. Each one of those doctors told me something different as to what was wrong. Why am I pulling my hamstring? Why is okay, I've got this torn labrum in my hip. How do I fix it? One person go, oh, you got to strengthen this. You got to strengthen that. And as I would continue to have these sort of compensation injuries, I started to trust less, which means it started to get into my head more of like, is that person the person I should be listening to? Is my body telling me something that it shouldn't? And I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is when you actually identify a solution, because the body is fluid, right? You're not the best athletes. You're the best compensators. Your body has the best ability, the top performance in the world, to just make adjustments on the fly, to constantly shift and rotate and realign itself to perform at the highest level. That's sort of the way our bodies were built for, gazillions of years. Yeah. Of just your body needing to solve this problem. And when you can find that solution, though, you just have to hope now that this is the solution, because he's fully bought in on this. And a setback would mean you go back to the drawing board mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even. And so, I'm hoping this is the case, because when you buy fully in, you kind of expect there to be outcomes from this that allow you to move forward for that. So your take on this now is that, okay, a role against Mexico if it's the right time, but starting against Panama.
Yes, I think that
he should be getting more minutes this weekend. Hopefully that increases his workload and the ability to play in the same way that we always talk about Christian Pulisic of 15, maybe 40, and moving on. But I mean, Dortmund, by the way, are in somewhat of not a title race, but somewhat in a title chase in the league. So it's not like they can cater to him at this point and where he's at.
Well, I think what's beneficial, at least from an American perspective, is that Dortmund are one of the few teams in the Bundesliga this week that have 2 games. So they play Mainz on Wednesday, and then they play again on the Sunday, March 20th, against FC Cologne. So it's great because that'll allow him to really ramp up and get more meaningful minutes. And then we'll see. I assume he's having conversations right now with Greg and also the club to figure out if this is the best situation for him. I'm sure the club's a little tentative, like, hey, we pay his paycheck, we don't want to risk him. But then Greg's like, we have to risk him. We're trying to qualify for a World Cup. And really all of this goes hand in hand, because if Gio Reyna's not in the World Cup, you're not going to sell as many jerseys, dudes. You know what I mean? So I think it all kind of works together and is intertwined. But yeah, I'm very curious about his minutes. I think you bring him in. And while I'm thinking about that, I think you bring Weston McKennie in as well. I think you bring him into the team and you have him around. He has that confidence and swagger that I think is important for this particular group. Even if he's on crutches, he can still provide something, some emotional positivity that I think is important for the group. When he's not around, maybe we don't have that same type of confidence. And so I wonder what Greg's going to do with that. I would bring him, almost make him a de facto assistant coach, our emotional assistant coach. And then with regard to Gio, though, I wouldn't start him against Mexico. I think that's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be physical. And maybe you bring him in based on the situation. If we're chasing it, he could help us, obviously, even if we're up a goal, which I hope we are. His ability to maintain possession, his ability to make good decisions on the ball would help us as well. So I don't think there's any situation where he couldn't help us. So maybe you bring him in, give him 30 minutes, but you're also thinking, hey, man, we need you for that Panama game more than anything. So, and then you give Pulisic, you give the Aronson, maybe Timo Weah, who looks to be starting against Chelsea because Renato Sanchez is hurt in the Champions League. So that's another good opportunity for Timo Weah to kind of showcase what he's about at the highest levels. So, yeah, there's a lot of good options. I'm less concerned, I guess, about the winger position than I was a couple weeks ago, but goalkeeper is still an issue. Center back isn't necessarily locked down. Who's starting for McKennie? Who's our number 9? We still have some in the middle of the spine issues, Heath Pearce.
Yeah. And by the way, we've got a comment from Vince O that says, Jimmy looks like a guy from Iowa who won a cruise. He's a handsome man and all, but that lid. I mean,
show some respect.
I only knew people that wore the visors were always my PE teachers growing up.
With really tight shorts and polo tucked in.
What's funny is my PE teachers growing up were in the 90s. And so, that means that, the whole outfit actually comes together as like a time capsule of something. I like it, Jimmy. So don't let,
listen,
don't let
I got a fanny pack. I'm wearing my Tevas right now with socks. Like I've got it all working right now for me.
Yeah. I think it's great. So,
thank you.
If this is what people are focusing on, then we're doing all right with the things that we're saying. If anything, it's a nice distraction from them not calling BS on the things that we're saying. But I caught myself rubbing my face a few seconds ago, a little bit distraught at the idea of I continue to go back to the performances of Timothy Weah on the U.S. men's national team have been fantastic of late, but he has not been able to consistently replicate that at the club level. And it worries me. Now I'm speaking more at 30,000 foot, holistically about the development of this player and the quality that we can see at times in qualifying versus his club situation, which is, how it is. Maybe it's different for wingers, but I would say consistently for somebody his age, he needs to be starting at a club team. He needs to be playing regularly, and he needs to have that confidence of getting goals and assists. And he just hasn't really put up the stats so far this year. And I worry about that. And maybe, we've seen in the past, the national team becomes the escape. We've seen Christian Pulisic come in and get his confidence back when he doesn't have it at the club level. We've seen that from other players as well. Hopefully Ricardo Pepi does that at some point. But with regard to Timothy Weah, and I think about his impact, I just wonder how sharp, how fresh is he? Is he in the right environment to mentally come in and make the impact? I know he has the game changer mentality, but do you have the sharpness that comes with it is one of my worries. But again, you're right. We're not having to be as worried of saying, if not Timo Weah, then we're really screwed. We've got other players and other options.
We do. I'm looking at his stats. I mean, the last time he had a goal or an assist for Lille was back on December 1st. It was an assist against Rennes. And that was one of his last few starts. He's only played 7 games since then. And nothing. I mean, he's not providing anything. I mean, even his ratings don't look very high. He's not having an impact or influence on the game. And that's a problem. I mean, it's not like he's not getting opportunities or hasn't had opportunities. And I know there's been some injuries mixed in, and that's not easy to work through, as you mentioned before about Gio Reyna. But there is something different. I feel like he has a different pep in his step when it comes to playing for the national team. And we've seen that with other players as well. You just feel at home in some ways. You feel comfortable. You're around people that trust you and believe in you. And that's a little bit harder to find at the club level, where you can be dispatched pretty quickly. That if you're not playing well, if you're not the man of the moment, well, they've got 5 or 6 other options, and maybe some younger players they want to try that. Hey, if you're not producing, well, that's the way it goes. I mean, that's part of the sink or swim mentality, and that's why we want a lot of our younger American players to go over there to cut their teeth in that environment, which maybe doesn't happen as consistently at the MLS level. So, yes, it's going to be interesting to see what Greg does with Timo Weah. I think we missed him when we played away to Canada. I think we missed his presence, his ability to get to the end line, get crosses, be dangerous in 1v1 situations, just doing what he should be doing for Lille. We've just not seen it a lot, or they're not finishing what he's providing. But it's I don't know. I don't know if Greg's going to start him. I don't think you start Gio Reyna. I think the big question is, do you start Aronson or Weah, and then Pulisic will start for sure. I think that Aronson and Pulisic kind of look for the same type of ball. Not that they're occupying the same spaces, but it's almost like we don't have a yin and yang happening in our front three. Whereas if you have a Weah, he's looking to do certain things that are a little bit different than Pulisic, whereas Aronson and Pulisic are kind of looking to do the same thing. So that'll be interesting. I don't even know. That's a good one. But I think our number 9 could dictate also what we're thinking, because we could put Timo Weah at the number 9 spot and maybe 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't know. It kind of depends. In some ways, this feels weird to say, but I'm thinking about it from a defensive perspective. How do we want to press Mexico, and where do we want to press them on the field? And if you have a player that's more set up to do that or help you kind of trap those players, or has the energy to do it, like Jordan Pefok scored again. He leads the Swiss League in goals, Jordan Pefok. But I think the knock on him is he doesn't really play the way that Greg likes from a defensive perspective. He doesn't pressure the same way, or whatever it may be. Like, the guy's hot. The guy's hot. Bring him in. If he is not on the roster, I'll be pretty disappointed if Jordan Pefok isn't on the roster. But we can save that for a little bit later. With regard to kind of our front three, I do think there's going to be some conversations from Greg and his staff about where are we trying to win the ball with Mexico, where are we trying to set them up, and maybe some players or who he starts will be influenced by that.
Yeah, I think about the context of the national team versus, say a club team where even now we're in our final 3 games. I'm not, and don't get me wrong, this was always the case in national teams, and it is always the case unless you have like historic styles of play that are developed at both the club and national team level, where you have a number of your top players coming from the same couple of clubs, similar to say Brazilian style of play culturally, or Spain, or the way Italy plays. You're raised in this Italian system, and then you go out and you're at least built on this foundation. The US and I would say most countries, right, including anyone outside of the top. We just got a message from our producer Des that says Jimmy's duck face is aggressive. I agree. It's a thing. It's his thinking face. He's thinking right now.
I'm listening. I'm listening intent. This is my listening intently face.
Yeah. I like that. It's showing something different than you just looking at me. It's showing like I'm listening intently, like deep in thought. But like we've always struggled with the national team, I think for a long time, of like, what is the identity? Now we know that the culture of the national team has always been on like fight and grind and all these things. And it's good to have this national team have that back for the most part as we went through 2018 and we failed to sort of bring that to the table. But I still wonder, Jimmy, like, what is our pressing game? I know Greg, if you hear from the players, Greg likes to press high and he likes to press all the time. He wants his players high and wide and the build-up. I see all those types of things from time to time. But at a certain point, the players have to buy into that system and say, hey, you look at some of the more clever teams on the field, they're like, press for 15 minutes, then they drop back. Jimmy, every pregame was like this, right? Drop back after 15, then we set our line at the top of the circle. And then all of a sudden, you smell a little blood, maybe you push your lines back up. I don't always see that sort of fluidity.
Can you do it though with the Champions League? Can you do it with the national team? Are you around the team enough to be able to implement that? I don't know,
Jimmy. You got your A license. You tell me, man. I've only got a B. That's above my pay grade. You tell me.
I get it. No. I'm trying to find a narrative, when I think a real narrative, not just one out of thin air. But is it that easy to build a sophisticated pressing system when you're not around the guys a lot? With a club, of course, it's a lot easier to because you have every week you're around the group, or you're every 3 or 4 days you can tinker. Hey, you know what? This didn't work. Think about it this way. This situation, this team likes to do this. But the national team, I think it's a little bit harder, and I think having more of a blanket, generalized view of how you want to press is probably easier. I'm hearkening back to what we did under Bob Bradley, under Bruce Arena. We didn't overcomplicate that side of the game. And maybe you're speaking to that, because sometimes it feels like maybe Greg does overcomplicate things, or maybe asking too much of the team, when maybe it would just be a little bit easier if we just had our line of confrontation. Like you said, hey, 15 minutes, we're going to press our asses off. And after that, let's just sit back a little bit and absorb and see how they handle that. I mean, I wish that it wasn't just all or nothing. Maybe it's changed a little bit under Greg, and I think he's evolved quite a bit over the World Cup qualifying phase and just in general over the last year, let's say. But that we don't have to try to punch him in the face all the time. I think you have to pick your spots. There's obvious cues, right? If they got a goal kick or a deep throw in or whatever, where you can press. But I also think there is something to what you're saying, that it is nice. They are clever teams, the ones that know how to drop off. And then when they can smell the blood, they go for it. And that's, for us, under Bruce Arena at least, that was driven by the center backs. Yeah. If the center backs said it was time to go, we would somewhat and we were somewhat kind of the quarterbacks in terms of when to press and how. So that kind of made it easier, because you knew that information was only coming from 2 players. I don't know what Greg's saying, but I would be pretty surprised if it wasn't something similar.
Well, you talk about like triggers a lot, right? Which is like, okay, square pass, we hold in our shape. Back pass is when we release, or any of those types of things that are team triggers, that are cues for the idea to saying, okay, now we press up, or now we push our lines, or now we clear the lines, or whatever. And I'm just thinking, the reason I think about this is and then we'll move on to Tyler Adams, because I want to talk about him and his form, and the fact, the physical health he's in, but also the fact that he hasn't really been a full starter as of late as well. But I think about Manchester United against Spurs, right? And I think about the fact that it's a club team, and you bring in Rangnick, who wants to high press, he wants to gegenpress, he wants to win the ball in higher places up the field. And then you play against a Spurs, and you say, you know what? Spurs want us to do that. They want us to push our numbers up, and they want to expose us. They want us to have the build-up play. They want us to get the ball in deep spots. And I know those are 2 separate thoughts I had in there, But sometimes it's like almost like, okay, allow them to build up on us and expose themselves because they want to sit back on us. Everybody wants to sit back against the U.S. and then counter and then punch us in the face. So why don't we allow them to have possession in a way that might not be as sexy or us dominating the flow of play, and then allow us to win the ground game by allowing them to be out of balance or spending too many numbers for it. I don't know. I just think about that. And again, the game is fluid, so it's not like you're going to be able to be like, there it is. Oh, there it is. I can see what they're doing now and blah, blah, blah. Because you have 11 players on the other team that are also doing what they want according to their game plan. So I just wonder if you think, can it be better given that it's a national team? Can it be more clear for us as fans or as pundits or former players? Like, can that identity become more clear? Or are we always just going to be like, I think we know what they're doing?
No, that's good. I think I like that. But before I say anything, like, comment, and subscribe, everybody. Okay. Like, comment, and subscribe. What I was thinking about when you were speaking is another trigger, a cue is there one player on the other team that we want to have the ball? And I'll use Manchester United again as an example. When they played in the Europa League final against Villarreal, it was clear that Villarreal is like, we're going to let Lindelof and Bailly have the ball. We're going to let them make the game. Yeah. And Man United, and we're gonna block the passing lanes. Bruno Fernandes can't get in there. They're not gonna have any space between the lines to try to break us down. If we're gonna lose this game, we're gonna lose to two center backs that don't really know how to pass. And I think that is another potential thing that you can do as a national team coach when you're not around the other guys. Say, hey, listen, this is the player that we kind of want to have the ball, and we want him to try to force it into these spots, and that is where we're gonna try to win it. Now, the next level of this, or the next step beyond this, and where I think teams and players in particular get frustrated, and when you get frustrated, what happens? You get emotional. You don't want your team to get emotional. You want to try to stay as clear-headed as possible and even keel throughout even the high-pressure situations, is when that plan doesn't work. And you and I both know, Heath, that plan of where we're going to trap, where we're going to win it, isn't going to work 100% of the time. But how does the player and how do the team players and the team react when it does not work? When it all of a sudden they break that pressure? Can we manage that next phase of the game, that part of the transition of the game? And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. And that goes for club teams all around. But I just, in terms of like finding that identity that you're talking about, are we going to be able to see it? I honestly kind of wish. I mean, there's going to be some. We want to see the effort. We want to make sure that when the cues are there, when it's high pressure and it's time to win it, we all go together, right? We want to see that and not leave ourselves vulnerable with just a ball over the top because we're playing a high back line. I think it needs to be a little bit more subtle, where you are just like, there's a part of me that when I ever start coaching, or even when I'm doing the youth coaching I'm doing now, I talk to my team a lot of, can we still control the game when we don't have the ball? And that's what I would like to see a little bit more from the U.S., where we don't necessarily look uncomfortable. That doesn't mean sitting back and absorbing on the top of your box. It's just, cool, we got them exactly where we want. They can have the ball. They can keep it a little bit. Atletico Madrid did it very well in leg one against Manchester United, bring them up again, where they conceded a lot of possession, but they were devastating in the counter, and they never sat back. In that game, I just bring this up because I just talked about it on HQ. In that game, Manchester United, in leg one in Madrid against Atleti, only touched it in Atleti's box 5 times. It's the lowest or the fewest touches any other team had out of 16 teams in the round of 16. 5 touches in the box. Now, of course, one of them was the first shot on goal, and United scored. It was a bit of a mistake defensively from Atleti, and they got punished for it. That's what happens. But that, I love that. That means they're not sitting back and absorbing. They're still kind of hanging out in that middle block and being tough to break down. I'd love to see more of that from the U.S. and not be like, we're either high pressing everybody or we're just going to sit on top of the box, And I feel like that would be kind of the evolution of what I'd like to see a little bit more. Now I'm getting a little soccer geeky here on everybody, but that is what I would like to see from more of a nuanced kind of identity.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jimmy, quick question. Yes or no? Will GGG call up Pefok for this window? And I want to know from everybody, by the way, and we're going to answer this, Des, if you can leave that comment up on the screen there for a second. We're going to answer that in a second. But
yeah, 1,000%. I mean, who else is out there?
Was he not in fantastic form the last window? I mean, he's in great form. I think he was on 12 or 13 goals then.
Okay, but now it's like, okay, you could say, well, maybe he just got hot at the right. I mean, now that the form's undeniable.
Yeah,
you got to bring him in. It's not like he just got hot for 2 or 3 weeks, and you're like, well, that's okay. I know what he's about.
And it's not like they're running away with the league. They're in second place in the league. They fired David Wagner, and he's still scoring those goals, chasing second place in the league.
You know what he's very good at is getting in front of his defender to get on the end of crosses. Like that little angle of getting in. And I feel like there's a value of bringing him in. Okay, sure. You're Greg Berhalter. Like, all right, this guy's forcing my hand. I don't want to start him per se because he doesn't really hit the flow of or whatever. He does the little things that I like. But this is a guy that can get on the end of crosses. And if you're losing a game and you start to get a little desperate and you start whipping balls in, as you should, you can't be perfect anymore when there's 9 or 10 guys to break down. Having a guy like Jordan Pefok come off the bench, I don't know what other players do we have that can do that. Jossie Zardes, I guess, can be in that conversation. Pepe at times can do that. Start. I mean, all those guys are going to work hard and do the thing, but Pefok is doing it and he's getting on the end of goals. So yeah, he's got to be in. And if Greg, I would want to invite, I will text Greg and be like, you got to come on our show and explain to us why Jordan Pefok would not be called in. That would be insane for me at this point for him not to get called in.
That's a good shot. All right, here's the next question. Is the worry of playing against a low block this window gone? And this is actually a great perspective, which is no way Panama and Costa Rica will be playing for the counter when they need points more than we do. I mean, just to give my quick little thing, I think that's a great question. But playing on the counter is still a way in which you go about getting points. You know, playing in the low block when you're El Salvador or Honduras or even Costa Rica it's a tactic. It's not a survival thing. It's a tactical play at exposing the other team or creating imbalances in the other team that leave them exposed. You know, our fullbacks are notorious for both being high and wide and out of position at times that leaves us exposed. If you're looking at videotape of that or game tape of that, I'm going, oh, I see a gap there. I see a gap there. Let's just keep on bringing them in. Maybe I can even get Zimmerman or I can get Robinson or whoever's in that spot to drive the ball forward and now have a bad turnover. Okay, now we've got something to work with. Whereas if I'm Costa Rica and I don't have speed and I don't have certain things, yeah, okay, maybe the counterattack doesn't work as well, but it still might be my best shot at getting a result.
That's a great question and great insight and thought process. I love it. What I'll say is you're asking Costa Rica then to be something that they haven't really worked on. You're asking them to all of a sudden just change into this high pressing, high possession team.
Oh,
and that's
kind of like how we are with the national team. We just expect them to be what we want them to be,
right when we want them to be based on the opponent. It's just not that easy. And I think that it could be a tough ask. Where I agree with you immensely, Heath, is there is a lot of value in still playing the counterattacking system. If Panama beats Honduras in the first game, which we fully expect that they will, they'd be, and say we lose to Mexico, they're only 1 point behind us. So getting a draw against us at home isn't the worst result for them. So they still don't need to really expose themselves defensively yet. And I think it's in their best interest to actually sit back. We have struggled with low block teams. Costa Rica, the last game could be a little bit different. We might have already qualified at that point. We might be a little looser. We might be playing different players. So there might be an opportunity for them. And let's be honest, if we beat Panama at home and then we go down to Costa, if we beat Panama at home, we should have qualified, my hope. And if Costa Rica, and we've already qualified, Costa Rica benefits from us beating Panama. They're trying to catch them in fourth. So maybe in that instance, they would try to extend themselves and try to get that first goal. But I don't know. I still think we're going to see a lot of low blocks. I think Mexico knows that we struggle a little bit in that as well, even though they'll play us a little bit higher because they like the high press. But they do a pretty good job of picking their spots in terms of, and actually they're very aggressive in that middle block as well, Mexico.
Oh, that's well said. Well, listen, guys, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the goalkeeper situation, which I think is really important, as well as some MLS, some Champions League, some Concacaf Champions League, that is. So we will be right back.
This is about our legacy. Always has been and always will be. Paramount Plus presents Women Who Move Mountains. Everybody ready? Let's fly. A celebration of the powerful, hilarious, game-changing women who bring our series and stories to life. And they're all here on Paramount Plus. Women Who Move Mountains. Explore the collection and so much more on Paramount Plus.
All right, Jimmy, this is just for YouTube, so we get to comment on that. Father of 2 daughters, father of 3 daughters. That's a great little promo. That
we have a lot of daughters here.
Yeah, a lot of daughters. We're a 5-a-side team at a minimum,
We
unless one of us
women's
wants
national
to...
team is in good hands. That's all I have to say.
Great. Well, TBD. TBD.
Well,
if
yeah.
they're, yeah,
Yeah, sure. I don't want to
but
put too much
either-
pressure.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna be great. You're gonna be the best player ever. You're gonna, And by the way, Olivia Moultrie, I saw this photo of her, and then we'll get back into these things. But when they won the Concacaf championship, she's holding, I think it was a trophy or something. I don't know. I just saw her face, and she was smiling so wide and bright that, like, and I'm sure she has a great time being a professional athlete as a kid for the last couple of years, but she's gone through this lawsuits and she's gone through all these things that it was just nice to see her playing with people closer to her age and just having fun. I thought it was a really cool moment for them. Congrats to the U.S. women's youth national team on that and qualifying for their World Cup. But anyways, back to the subject at hand here, Jimmy. Zach Steffen returns to Man City. He's on the bench as the match is being played, as this show is going on right now. Ethan Horvath is a bona fide starter at the moment. Instead of there being, him coming in an injury type of situation. 5 straight starts, just 2 goals conceded. Gabriel Slonina, also part of the only team in Major League Soccer that's still got 3 clean sheets, hasn't given up a goal this season.
Right.
A good problem to have, but also a problem nonetheless. Like it does feel like we're still less than an ideal goalkeeper scenario, knowing that Matt Turner's out. Zach Steffen's got the constant kind of back spasm issue. And then we've got 2 other goalkeepers. One's got they both got a hot hand. One's lacks experience. The other one was huge for us in the Nations League. I mean, what do you make of all of this? And I guess, which way are you leaning? We did our sort of teams, and you had Horvath, right? I believe.
I did. I went with Horvath because, and he's continuing to prove me right, that when he got the opportunity with Forest, he's made the most of it. 5 games, only 2 goals against, helped them continue to advance in the FA Cup, and got nominated by the FA Cup for the save of the 5th round. He's just on it, and I think I go with him. Slonina's very young. To give him that first game against Mexico, it just sounds intense. It just sounds intense, and I worry about putting him in that situation where
Superman wears Ethan Horvath pajamas is what the comment says on the screen.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Vince knows. Vince knows. So I feel like Horvath, because he has that experience, because he saved that penalty against Andres Guardado in the Nations League final, I think you go with Horvath at this point. He's got a little bit of that juice. He knows what it means to be a part of the team. He's been around. No disrespect to Slonina, who I think will probably be our number 1 for years to come here, and I think he'll be pushing these other guys come 2026. But right now, I think Horvath is the guy, and maybe somebody you can just trust in a little bit of a different way. Now, Slonina, I wouldn't be surprised with anything that he does. What an incredible talent at 17 years old for Chicago Fire. And if we're in effort mode, then why not just throw Slonina out there? But I feel like Horvath gives us a little bit, just that little bit of experience does make a difference. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my worry with Horvath, and it's not a worry because he's in form and he's playing at a high level for a historic team at the moment, and he's getting the starts and he's in a great level of confidence.
Okay,
but
this is going to go against any Jordan Pefok. Like you're going not going with the hot hand, or you're going to go with the hot hand?
Having said that, no, it's just that what's the difference between him and Slonina, other than the fact that Horvath was thrown to the Wolves and did well in the Nations League final, was man of the match and being huge. But again, I get it because you're talking about just years of experience in these big moments. But at the national team level, you're talking about a very small window. Horvath's been involved in the national team for a while now, but in terms of like pressured moments or moments of consequence, Nations League was the first one.
No, it was. I get that, and
he rose to that challenge. He very well could have not, but maybe that's the answer. Is that he succeeded in that.
Well, yeah, and Slonina, I think, could very well do the same, and I think he's proven himself already at the MLS level, and I just think Mexico, or even the Panama game, Zach Steffen apparently is back in training, but what does that mean? I mean, we still need to get him. He's definitely not going to be as sharp as we'd like. Horvath is sharp. He's sharp right now. It's the same argument you could use for Jordan Pefok. If you go with the person who's sharp, or are you going to go with the person historically that you usually play? My thought is this. I was in New York City when the U.S. played Mexico and we lost 3-0. And that's when I was there at the game, and Zach Steffen touched the ball more than Christian Pulisic. We had our goalkeeper touch the ball more than our number 10. And we tried to play out of every single situation, and we got stung for it. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to go down to Azteca and make that happen. Now, if Steffen is healthy or relatively healthy to start, if you think that passing out of some situations is something you want to do against this Mexico team that's proven that they know how to stop that and are very good at stopping it, I don't know. I just feel like we got to go down there, and it's going to be a fight, and we have to expect it to be a fight like every other World Cup qualifying game in CONCACAF. Mm-hmm. This one's going to be no different. I don't know. I saw Kai in the chat saying that's Steffen, if healthy, should start. What does that mean, though? I mean, he hasn't had any. He's not match fit. Like, he's not sharp. I know, yes, he's training against some of the best players in the world at City. I get that. I think there's value there, and he's with a great manager, but I just think you got to go with the hot hand. It's the same reason you got to go with Pefok. I mean,
yeah,
isn't that what this is about? You play the guys that are hot, man, and are sharp and are doing the job.
It certainly is. Well, here's something else, Qué Golazo listeners. We want you all to compete with us in a bracket challenge game. I'll be in there. Jimmy will be in there. Luis Miguel Echegaray will be in there. You like the way I said that? And we want you to as well. So join us at cbssports.com/Golazo brackets.
Ooh.
And the winner gets a $100 gift card to Paramount Plus.
I can't wait to win that. I'm gonna stuff everybody. I'm gonna stuff you all.
Yeah, you're able to watch NCAA tournaments on P+, tons of soccer from the Champions League to CONCACAF, golf majors in the spring, and NFL football in the fall. Also, we're excited for the debut of Halo, which is streaming March 24th exclusively on Paramount+. Head to ParamountPlus.com/Halo to try it for free. But back to the brackets.
Listen, hold on. If I win this bracket, everybody watching, I will be so insufferable, more insufferable than usual. I will be flexing on everybody like 30 seconds into every podcast.
Well, listen, who enters just one pool? You can also create a group to compete against friends and fill out your bracket for the chance to win a trip to the 2023 Final Four. It's free to enter. You can play on the CBS Sports app or at cbssports.com/Golazo brackets. Now,
you know what? I might do that, Heath, so that I can at least win one bracket. I think if the more group and more friends I invite, the better my odds to win one. And I'll still dunk on everybody.
All right, Jimmy, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're going to talk about MLS teams being dominant in CONCACAF Champions League. The bad news is I don't have my charger to my laptop plugged in, and obviously we're burning up a lot of life right now. So while I ask you this question, you're going to talk. I'm going to run. I'm going to grab the charger. I'm going to plug it in. We're going to get back to this conversation. Does that work for you?
I wish we had a Heath on the run cam, just so we can see how fast you are.
These are like those late night shows with like James Corden, where like sprinting through the hallways of things because you got 30 seconds to win some sort of prize. Jimmy, do you think this is the turning point where MLS teams, because you're trying to slow me down and get my computer to turn off, do you think this is the turning point where MLS teams finally start to dominate these continental competitions?
I think that it's continuing to evolve, Heath Pearce. I think it's, and everybody listening, I think that we are starting to, turning point sounds pretty strong. I think this has been years in the making, where we're starting to make more and more inroads. We're starting to be a little bit more competitive. We're starting to think about being good in this particular competition, and that we can compete at the highest levels. Now, we haven't done it consistently, and I think that's going to be the turning point. Not, can we do it once? Can we do it 5 years in a row like Mexico and their clubs have done for many years? They're clearly the dominant league, and the teams are dominant in this particular situation. That said, for everybody that doesn't know, the Seattle Sounders up on Leon 3-0, played very well. Christian Roldan in particular was excellent in this game. New England up 3-0 over Pumas. Sebastian Lletget scored in that one. Cruz Azul 1-0 over Montreal. Now, that game was in Mexico, so they have to go back to Montreal and try to get a result. And then we have New York City. NYCFC took down Comunicaciones, Guatemalan side. It was 3-1 in leg one. NYCFC, I'll be honest, has kind of surprised me. I thought because they had a target on their back, they were going to, people were going to try to treat them a little bit different as the reigning champions of MLS. But they're coming out. It's almost like it's given them confidence that, hey, you know what? We're actually pretty good and suck at haters. And I think they're going to get past Comunicaciones. Now, Cruz Azul is very good. I think Montreal might have a little bit of work to do. Hope they prove me wrong. The Sounders, though, and the Revs up 3-0 after leg one. Now, we have notoriously struggled in Mexico for either leg one or leg two, but I feel like this could be an opportunity where we start to gain a little bit of an advantage coming into these farther into the knockout rounds. Again, though, turning point sounds strong, Heath. We have to do this consistently on a regular basis for this to feel like a turning point. But obviously we've planted seeds and we've laid inroads of, we're going to be more competitive. Our budgets are getting bigger. We're signing players. We're getting a little bit more deep. Our schedule is starting to change so we can be more competitive at the right time. So, and maybe that's just due to the Winter World Cup. Maybe that's how it all worked out for us this time around. But this is all positive. Now we still have second legs to get into, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of the MLS teams lost their 3-0 lead. It's just what we like to do when we play in Mexico. But right now, everything's looking pretty good.
Yeah, Jimmy, I heard that whole thing. I was gone. I mean, I live in like
you're back though.
I live in like a 50,000 square foot house. So imagine how fast I am to be able to run that far. It's like, the MTV Cribs stuff where you used to see them.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like that's, I'm just kidding. It's like,
did you give a fist bump to Justin Bieber? You guys share a space. Yeah.
Yeah. And exactly. Yeah. We're and I live behind like 3 gates. So it's like really hard to get to our houses. So it's most of us in this community are just best friends because it's a lot of work to get out of there. But listen, everyone, make sure you're commenting and liking these videos and subscribing because it makes this community bigger and better. And Jimmy and I, we can't talk about it yet, but we've got some great news coming up for you guys. So we're just going to keep on dangling that carrot.
Tease.
I want to say it so bad, but I can't say it. So you guys are just going to have to.
It's going to be awesome.
But I will promise you this, the more that you like and the more that you comment and get engaged in these, the more likely I am to spill the beans when I'm not supposed to and probably get in big trouble. So, but we got some great news coming up for USMNT Hour very, very soon. Now, here's a question, Jimmy, that's on the screen. From Jason that says, well, it's not really a question, but it's a question for the group. I don't know how I feel about Roldan. He's shown he can play well and play well against non-MLS teams in the League Cup and CCL, but somehow, how come it doesn't click in the national team? Now, before you make it about Christian Roldan, Jimmy, I would love it if you could just contextualize for anybody just the difference of club environment, national team environment, the intensity, the speed of the game, just all the little details that change things. Because I, too, spent most of my career I had the fortunate opportunity to have 35 caps in the national team, but many of those I didn't always feel anywhere near how I felt with my club team in terms of comfort, in terms of confidence, in terms of, there were times that I did, but there were times that I just felt like I was playing more of a role in the team as opposed to being somebody who had more freedoms, less parameters, more creativity. And maybe that was partially on me. Maybe that was partially on the assignments placed by the staff. But can you give a little context around Roldan and the difference of his performances or perceived difference of performances between the national team and playing club ball, even against teams not in MLS?
Sure. Well, I will lean on what you just said, that when he's probably with his club team, Brian Schmetzer, the coach there, gives him more freedom to roam around, go find the game a little bit in a different way. Whereas I think, or at least it feels like under Greg Berhalter, everything's a little bit more regimented. There's certain things that they're looking to do, and he has to play within those parameters, where I feel like he's earned the trust enough of Schmetzer. Or maybe it's just club versus national team, where the national team, everything's pretty intense all the time. And I know that there's that game against Bosnia, right? In December. Was it Bosnia or was it? Yeah, it was Bosnia. And Roldan was wearing the number 10 shirt and he turned the ball over a ton. I thought he was just trying too hard in that particular game. He was trying to make the game because I felt like he had to, as opposed to letting the game come to him, which was unfortunate because he got a lot of slander for that. And he didn't play well, so rightfully so. I think we.
But you're trying to prove something, right? Like, how much do you feel that you're doing? It's different for a defender, right? Because you can, if no one says your name for an entire game or in a press conference or on the TV or whatever, pretty good game for a defender. But for an attacking player, you're trying to. It's more than just the game and the result. It's easy to get in your head of like, I'm trying to make a World Cup team. I'm trying to show that I should be a starter. I'm trying to show that I should be a go-to guy that you can trust. And there's a fine balance in that little gray area between like too confident, trying too hard, and not doing enough, where you're just sort of like, oh, that guy's replaceable.
So what I'll say very quickly was, I thought it was easier. This might be blasphemous or kind of counterintuitive. I thought it was easier to play for my national team than it was for my club team. And the reason I felt that way was because everybody was so good at their job at the national team level. All I had to do was focus on my job. And you could give insight to a certain player and they could do it right away. There wasn't like a conversation to be had, maybe because the stakes are higher and the intensity's a lot higher, that you don't have time to bullshit. You just get out there, you play, give some good information. If that isn't the right information, the game just moves so fast, right? With the national team, there's never really any time to like stop and think. You just have to keep going. The next play. And I loved that intensity, the energy of that. And I just felt like, man, when I get here with the national team, I just have to worry about being the best version I have to be of myself. When I'm with my club team, I got to be the captain. I got to worry about the mentality and mood of the whole team. I have to make sure everybody's feeling good about themselves. If somebody's a little bit down.
But as an attacker, it's a little, the game's a little faster. The gaps close a little quicker.
That's true.
You know, the freedom that you have of at your club level of saying, I might be 80% with this pass, but I know that I'm going to get the ball back and there's less ramifications. The game's going to flow through me. I'm going to get the ball more often than the club national team, where you might not get the ball as often. You're not the guy that they look to as much. You're not, you don't get to have 3-4 bad passes and know that like the fifth is going to be a good one. And that's good enough in that moment because they know that you're the best option for the job. It's a little different.
No, it's definitely different from an attacker. I mean, that's ultimately how I was going to tie it up with a nice little bow. From a defensive perspective, I just felt like the game was easier. Everybody kind of knew what to do. They knew how to press. They knew how to block passing lanes. Just all these little nuances and subtleties that made my job easier. From an attacking perspective, yeah, I could see it being more difficult because of the things that you're mentioning, because all of a sudden you're used to picking up a ball in a certain space between the lines. I'm looking at Roldan here, and you have some time, whether it's MLS, Concacaf Champions League, maybe that pocket exists, but the national team, it just doesn't. So what do? Do you go out wide? Well, Greg doesn't want you to go out wide. He wants you to stay central. Okay, great. Now I'm kind of caught in this purgatory where I'm not really touching the ball. And when I press, I'm not really doing anything, you know, where I don't feel like it's not that you're not doing anything. Even when you're giving some energy to a team collectively pressing, you are helping shape the game a certain direction, but you don't really feel like you're always a part of it, right? Because you're maybe forcing a long ball. You're like, okay, I forced the long ball, but I still didn't do it. I didn't win a tackle. I didn't block a pass. I didn't touch the ball. And so you have 20 minutes of that. And all of a sudden you're like, how do I even get into this game? And so, yeah, it's definitely different. And I can understand why certain players get caught pressing sometimes, because their moments on the ball are probably a lot more limited than they would be if they're playing for their club. And so you're trying to maybe do too much. And it really speaks to the discipline and quality of the players and the patience of the players to not force anything, to continue to just take what the game's giving them without trying to overstep it. And obviously then taking advantage of it when you do have some space. You got to maximize that, those moments when you can, have some space on the half turn. You can look up, do you make a cross? Do you play a little through ball? Do you just play it simple and play wide? I mean, what does the game need from you at that particular moment? Have we already taken a couple risks by whipping some balls in? Maybe we need to slow it down. It's all these little things you got to think about in the moment. And I don't envy attackers when they make that transition.
Coach, you're exhausting me, coach. Like, I just want to go out there and play soccer, Like, I just want to go out there and play, coach. Like, can I just go? I love the game. I just want to play. Like, how many guys did you know, Jimmy, that were just like, all right, dude, like, I just want to go and play soccer. Like,
because you know why? It's because it adds pressure for them to think more and to add more responsibilities to them. That's not why they play the game. They don't, it's not that they don't want the responsibilities. It's just how you package that information. So if I'm giving information to a player that gives me that type of thing, like, hey, coach, come on, I got it. I think you have to meet him halfway, and he's got to meet you halfway.
Yeah.
That's what has to happen. Listen, I want you to be yourself and go do your thing, but I need you to do these one or two things for the group because it's going to help the team in transition, either defensively or offensively.
Yeah, Coach Jimmy is right, Rufio. Coach Jimmy is right. Let me follow up that question, and then we're getting to the final ends of the show. So make sure if you haven't already, you like these videos, because if you're not, if for people that aren't watching this live, that will help it get sent out to people. And if notifications on, for those people, they'll get sent this video as well anyway. But we appreciate all of you helping to spread the gospel of this Coach Jimmy tactical session we're having right now. So Jimmy, you since you know everything, coach, how much of the responsibility then is it of the coach to get the most out of that player, right? So we go back to Roldan as an example. How much of that is environment? How much of that is mental on Roldan to there is a huge responsibility at the professional level of being like, no one's going to give it to you. You got to go and earn it because there's somebody behind you and there's somebody you're chasing, and that's the way it is. But how much of it is the coach, especially at the national team level, to build that confidence or work with them? Or is it not the national team's coach job like it is for a club team coach to help build these players?
Well, the national team coach job is unique for sure. You're not around the group of players as much. You're trying to build this chemistry and camaraderie that isn't easy to find. And I think we've shown that we have that with a couple different groups within our team. We proved it with the Nations League. We proved it with a completely different group for the most part in the Gold Cup. And now as we have to adapt and adjust based on injuries or form through World Cup qualifying, And that's not an easy task. I don't envy that Greg Berhalter or anybody else that has to go through it on the national team level to try to figure that out. And to you want to add these layers to your team that, as we mentioned before about the collective pressing, like where are you going to press it? What are we going to do? Who's going to get the ball? What are we doing on that side of the ball? Then how does that help us transition into attack? How do you make that as simple as possible and make sure that everybody's hearing the same things? I think that's the biggest trick, Heath. When we coach, you can have 20 players in front of you and you're saying something, and every player is receiving that information in a different way. They're thinking, oh, wow, is he talking to me? Or now he's talking about that other player. You know how that goes. Like, oh, he's not talking to me. He's talking to somebody else. But that information actually could pertain to you at some point. And so how are you receiving that information? I think that's the trick of a great coach. And I think for the most part, what I've seen is I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. That's tangential from Greg. But I do think in terms of like the intangibles of chemistry and camaraderie, I think we're there. It's just these other little things against maybe some opponents that, you know, or sometimes he overcomplicates it, right? He changes the lineup too much, or he puts players in positions hoping they play well, but that isn't necessarily their best spot. And we saw that a lot with Jurgen Klinsmann at times. It's a tough one. I'm now going off on like other tangents here, but I don't. It's just hard to. It's hard to get too complicated with the national team. And I think the communication's key. So what kind of communication do you want as a national team? There are some managers that won't talk to you at all. And then you'll see them at a camp and they might not even talk to you then, right? You're not even really dealing with the main guy.
Yeah.
But there's other national team coaches that want to be your best friend, right? They're talking, they're texting you, hey, great performance today. They're putting their kind of like virtual arm around your shoulder if you don't play well in a particular performance. I think you have to know your team and the players and how to press their buttons and how that is also blending in with what the coach is telling them from a club level. It's tricky. I mean, I would love that opportunity to try and see if I can manage that. But, you know, right now we're all kind of living vicariously through Greg Berhalter.
Well, here's my final question for you, Jimmy, for today's USMNT hour. How do you think the start of this MLS season affects Gigi's decision making for Thursday's roster selection? I mean, do you think there's been enough players, like, you know, we had the camp before the season. He likes a lot of MLS players. Do you think form has played a decision in these first few games? Do you think that there's been any sort of these swings? I mean, how much do you think the start of the season has affected I think his decision making?
Well, I'll say that Roldan has looked good, especially in the CONCACAF Champions League, and I thought he was pretty solid against the Galaxy this past week as well, where he's just making a difference. He's having influence, right? He's either getting assists or he's creating dangerous opportunities. And that's a player that you want to bring in. I'm just using him as an example. Lletget, you know, what if he got to a slow start? If Lletget got to a slow start in the New England Revolution, you'd be like, I don't know. But since he's looked bright, he's getting a nice partnership with Carlos Gil in particular, and he scored. You know, I mean, I think that's against Pumas. I mean, it's good. It's good. Those are all positive things, especially against Mexican clubs, and we're playing against the Mexican national team. Like, all that stuff really ties in. Now, let's go the opposite. Jossie Zardes, not even the starter for a Columbus Crew. Just even more reason to bring in Jordan Pefok, right? And Jordan Pefok is in good form. So now Serginho Dest. Xavi said that he's in love with Dest, and then doesn't really play him. Didn't play against Osasuna this past weekend. Did play the 90 minutes against Galatasaray, Barcelona.
Well, and he talked about him potentially being a left back, and then put in Mingueza for Alba left back, also, of just having a chance to say, oh, I know that guy, and then didn't even use him. But yeah.
So then you have those players that, I mean, obviously you're going to call in Dest, but I'm using him as an example of somebody that's kind of in and out of the lineup, and that's frustrating. Tyler Adams is another one. Of course, we're going to bring him in. He's vital to our team, and he's proven that. But it's tough when they're not informed. So as it pertains to MLS, Slonina, I think, will get called in, whether he starts or not. I doubt it, especially if Steffen is out for sure. But you could have Horvath, you got Sean Johnson, you got Slonina, and you got your three goalkeepers there that I think could do the job. Any three of those. Center backs, Tim Reams, another one. Okay, dude's crushing it for Fulham. They're on top of the table in the championship, which is probably one of the most difficult leagues in the world to win, by 12 points. And it helps to have the cheat code known as Alexander Mitrovic, who's just banging in the goals for fun and setting records. And that helps. You know, goals solve problems. They take a lot of pressure off your back line. You can make mistakes and still go on to win games. But Tim Ream's been solid. You bring him back in at this point. He's got the experience. He's been in these games before. That's Aaron Long. You know, he was a Greg Berhalter favorite. I mean, there's a lot of questions. Weston McKennie, who starts there? You know, is it Acosta and Adams? Do you risk Adams in the first one? I mean, obviously, we're going to get into all this for our preview once we get closer to the games. But these are some big questions that I think aren't necessarily easily resolved. And I think form does help you solve and answer some of those questions. Because if you're on the fence with anybody and they're playing well, you should bring them in. That's where Jordan Pefok gets very, very interesting. Are we going to bring him in when the guy's in red hot form?
Well said, Jimmy. I like that. Big questions indeed. And by the way, if you do need help filling out your bracket, CBS Sports HQ has got you covered with nonstop coverage of every game from every region of the NCAA tournament. Leave it to the experts this year. We know you might be rusty after taking last year off. Stream CBS Sports HQ all week long. Now, Jimmy, that is the end of our USMNT hour.
Man,
of course,
already?
we try to do this every single week. The link is in the description, by the way, to join that March Madness. Jimmy and I will both be part of it. I tend to overperform in these types of things. I have a very interesting way of selecting everything that I select, which
Go Bruins.
is not the most
UCLA,
intelligent.
baby.
But of course, USMNT Hour will be back every single Monday. And like I said, USMNT window.
We also, I mean, for sure, everybody circle your calendars. Once the roster drops,
roster's coming out. We're going to have an emergency.
We're going to have an emergency.
We're going into camp,
podcast.
and then we're going into, there's going to be a lot going on.
Buckle up your seatbelts and get comfortable with us, okay?
I keep circling this thing on my desk, which isn't actually a thing, but I keep on circling this international window mentally, and I keep circling it because it's coming up. It's the last one. It's do or die. The U.S. men's national team needs to qualify. We're going to be with you guys every step of the way. Previews, recaps, all those types of things.
Really quick, Heath. Really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like if we lose to Mexico and Panama beats Honduras and we only have a 1-point lead over Panama, that you will wear adult diapers for the U.S.-Panama game?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll wear an extra pair, Jimmy. Every time the national team plays, I'm wearing adult diapers, and sometimes just any diaper I can find because I get nervous about it. And by the way, we're giving away a year-long P+ subscription on tomorrow's UCL, that's Champions League, UEFA Champions League recap after the game. So make sure you tune in for that as well. It's a live show, and we're going to be giving away one of those. Just going to be a matter of people hitting that like button, and then, again, as usual, leaving your handle or your @ in the comments so that we can make sure that we get it to you guys. And of course, from myself, our producer Des Norris, and our superstar, that is Jimmy Conrad, that is Coach Jimmy Conrad, thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys tomorrow.